So today we're gonna talk about something really amazing, because today you're gonna pick your first Age of Sigmar army, and it's a huge, daunting task the first time to select what kind of army you like, what miniatures do you like. But today we're gonna narrow it down. We got 11 steps to go through so you can figure out what army you want. So today we're gonna talk about how to select your first Age of Sigmar army, which is a bit of a hard topic actually, because, well, there are just so many options. And so let's get straight into it. The first step you need to figure out is what options do you really have. So you got 4 grand alliances: destruction, order, chaos, and death. But inside each faction is the real factions, really. In order to know this, well, you could go to Games Workshop's website and go to the web shop, and you will see that they have a lot of options there. A lot of miniatures, really, but they are categorized in a way so you should be able to know what armies they are. A rule of thumb is just go with something that got a new battle tome. You can see if something is new by checking if it has a faction terrain or endless spells. And if it got that, you know you're in safe hand. You know that's released after Age of Sigmar 2.0. Also, even if it has a new battle tome, it might not be a very good option, because some of the models might be a bit outdated. So check to see if any of the stuff or a lot of the stuff is resin or metal, because you don't want to mess around with that as a new person entering the hobby. The Games Workshop site, it's not that great for picking out what options there are. So I've made a small guide on it where you can see what factions got a new battle tome, when did it release, do they have endless spell, do they have terrain features, are the models old. Try and remember when you're browsing around what you sort of like the look of, and write it down. So step 2 is figuring out what sort of project is this. If this is your first army, I think go into this with open arms and embrace everything the hobby has. It is important to figure out, are you gonna collect all of the miniatures available for this army? Are you only gonna do 1,000 points? Is this gonna be something you will collect for years and years and years? This is important because some factions has a limited amount of different miniatures. I collect everything destruction, but some of those factions are quite small. If we take something like the Iron Jaws, you got Oryx on a big pig, some big Oryx, and some smaller Oryx. And that's the army. It's hard for me to justify collecting any more than, say, 2,000 points, because it's the same bloody miniature over and over and over again. It also gets a bit boring when painting it, really. If you want to have a big sprawling collection, make sure you don't pick any of the very small factions. Something else you could do just to figure out if this is a project for you is start very small. You could buy a Shakespeare warband, because you get 5-10 models. It will be easy for you to see, are these miniatures really for me? Do I like painting them? Is the painting scheme I pick any good? All of that jazz. So that's a good way to start. You could also do a Warcry warband. Yeah, but step 2 is just figure out what kind of project this is. Now it's time to figure out your budget. And this is a really boring part, but it might be necessary, because this hobby can get pretty expensive pretty quick. Some armies are really expensive compared to other armies. And this is due to how many models you need, but also whether or not the start collecting box has the miniatures you need. Do you have the funds to buy everything? Sure man, just buy everything. If not, you should sort of figure out how much money do I have to spend on miniatures, and how much can I spend on some paint. Some of the armies are quite cheap to collect. Something like Beast Claw Raiders is really cheap because you don't need a lot of models, and the start collecting box is really good bargain. So something like that will be cheap. Yeah, so if you can form your base, the base of your army around a start collecting box or a starter set, you will get a discount on the main core part of your army, and that's gonna be really great for starting out, and will save you a lot of money. Something else you could do is buy miniatures on the second-hand market. As a first time army, I might avoid doing it, but it can be pretty cheap. I would suggest when buying second-hand that you're looking for something that's only assembled and maybe primed, because as soon as there's some paint on it, you know it's not gonna be pro painted, dude, and it's not gonna be something you like. So you want to strip the miniatures first before you can paint them, and that can be a real hassle. Maybe the person that had the army before you has not removed the mold lines, maybe he's glued it very badly, but you can save quite a lot of dollars, so maybe that's an option for you. Something you should avoid if you want to save some money is fine cast miniatures and metal miniatures. Yes, if you're on a budget, you should be really careful about buying stuff that you're actually not gonna use in your army. It can be hard to figure out what sort of units you will need in the end if you're going for a competitive army from the start. So an idea could be to borrow an army and play with it, see what's good, what's bad, what you like, what sort of playstyle in the army you like. Try and have a look at the different options you're considering right now for your army, and see which one is most expensive and how far between each other are they. Time for some fun stuff. You need to figure out what kind of miniatures do you like? What aesthetic are you after? What kind of race do you like the look of? What turns you on inside your little hobby heart? I suggest looking at pictures, just a lot of different pictures, a lot of different paint schemes for different miniatures. Go to the Grand Alliance community with the forum and the blog stuff there. It's really good for looking at different miniatures, cool miniature or not. It's also a great place to have a look at different kind of painted miniatures, because the paint scheme can really matter in whether or not you like the look and aesthetic of a race or faction. And if in this process you see a paint scheme you really like, note it down, save the picture for reference later. Have a look around, and do you like big monsters? Then the Beast Claw Raiders or some chaos stuff will be you. Do you like humans? Then the free cities. Do you like sort of elfy stuff? There's a lot of cool elven options out there. There's just a lot of crazy cool stuff. So with your list of different armies now, write down sort of 3 cool things that each army does with regards to the miniatures, and write some of the stuff down that you're not as keen on. So try to narrow down what sort of elements with the miniatures with each army that it is that you find amazing, cool, that really sort of turns on your hobby users. So step 5, think about how it will be to paint that army. If you are going to collect 120 plus Groots, how will that be to paint? This might quickly make you realize that horde armies is maybe not the right option when you're just starting out. But also think about how will it be to paint all this cloth. How will it be to paint all this armor? Think about what is going to excite you about painting this or that particular army, but also think about what might be the negatives about this. What could potentially make it so that you will never get this, and what factors would make sure that you do get it painted up. Maybe before buying an army, really, you should try and paint a few miniatures. Figure out how it is to paint different things. Some people really hate painting eyes, so they go for something that's a bit less human. Some people really hate painting skin because it can be hard to make it look natural. Some people really love painting armor because it's so damn easy. Space Marines, Stormcast. Not a coincidence, man. If you've painted before or tried painting, how do you think this sort of particular army will fit your paint style? Is this army something you could easily do with some contrast paint? Because that might be a really good option right now. So what I'm really saying here is find something that you're excited about starting to paint, but also find something that you can realistically finish, and find something that is easy to paint. Something else you might consider if you're big on painting, and I know I am, I think about this when selecting an army, is can this army win best painted at a tournament? And some armies can, and all armies can of course win a best painted, but some armies lend themselves a bit better to that sort of style because you need some height on some of the models, you need different sort of aspects in different sort of miniatures, you need a wider range. Like the Iron Jaws would be really tricky to pull off because you only have so many variations on the style of model. So that might be an aspect to think about. So at the end of this step, just sort of write down the pros and cons of each army with regards to painting it up and see how they sort of match against each other. So step number 6 is really about the lore and the background and all that sort of stuff. And some people really don't care about this. They just care about, does the miniature look cool or does the miniature play nice? Some really care a lot, and for me it's really important. The lore or the background can get me hobby going again if I'm in a bit of a hobby slump. Reading a Gloomspite novel, as an example, has got me really excited again for the Gloomspite kids because I was in a bit of a hole with them because so many models, and the lore and background really invigorates me and gets me excited about painting up some nasty little kids. There's quite a lot of places to get into the lore. The best place for armies is the Battle Tome, which is a bit of a shame because you might not want to buy the Battle Tome before you decided on an army. But if you can borrow a Battle Tome, that's a really good place to start with the faction-specific lore. Also, YouTube is quite good with regards to the lore. 2+ Tough, linked down below. He has absolutely the best lore videos on Age of Sigmar. You could also try and see if there is a novel with regards to the faction you're looking into. And the Black Library stuff is getting pretty decent. Some of the old Stormcasty stuff was not really my jam, but it's getting quite good now that the background of Mortal Realms is getting a bit more meaty, let's say. City of Secrets and onwards, I think, are pretty good novels. And if you find something you think looks exciting, try that out. Step 7. What you need to sort of figure out is what kind of playstyle you like. So how do you go about figuring out what playstyle an army has, but also what playstyle you like? Try and get a demo game. Get a friend to teach you the rules. Try out an army. That sort of stuff will really quickly get you to know how things work, whether or not a combat heavy army is for you, or maybe you like movement, maybe you really dig the magic phase, endless spell, that sort of stuff. Just try and think about in other games, what sort of playstyle did you like? Are you more the defensive type, or do you like to sort of push the attack and push your opponent? If you got the chance to read the Battle Tome for some of the armies you like, in the allegiance abilities and in sort of the special rules for the artifacts, magic items, the spells and so on, you will get a feel for what style of army this is and what play style, what options you have. So the Gloomspite, just because I'm really into Gloomspite right now, they got a lot of debuff stuff, a lot of sneaky magic stuff. And it's really, whew, I get a hard on just talking about sneaky goblins. You could also watch some battle reports to sort of get to see how the army plays. Step 8. Well, we can't beat around the bush anymore. Now you know a bit about what sort of playstyle you like and what playstyle the armies have. But you might also need to consider the competitive aspect of the army, because in Age of Sigmar, the gap between a very poor army and a really top tier army is crazy big. Even in a casual game, you might have some issues. And that's one of the reasons why I always recommend buying an army with a battle tome from Age of Sigmar 2nd edition and onwards. But if you want to know what's competitive or not, if that's sort of your jam, I strongly suggest you look into The Honest Wargamer. Rob and his band are doing some amazing stuff with data and with lists. That's amazing stuff. Just check him out. So at the end of this step, figure out how important is it for you that you can build a competitive list with your army. If it's not important at all, fine, just skip it. If it's really important, there's a lot of faction you should avoid even touching. Maybe this is not a very important step, maybe this is the most important step. So step 9 here. So far in, you should have a really firm grasp on what you're looking for, what your options are, what the aspects that you sort of highly value and what sort of stuff you don't really care about. But what you might need to consider as well is that some armies has a lot of different kits and miniatures and rules, which means that you can sort of build the army in many different ways. And some armies, well, they only really do one thing: run ahead and punch stuff. But other armies can be built magic heavy, can be built defensively. You got a lot of different builds, as they say, inside the army. And that means it might prolong the enjoyment you have out of that one particular army. Now you need to figure out what is the most important thing for you. Try and think this through in a holistic perspective. All things considered, which army will be the best for you? Step 11. Make a decision. Now is the time to just pull the trigger. You might have that feeling in your gut from the start that this will be the perfect time. This is a hobby, it's supposed to be fun. You might not make the best decision in the world, but you will learn a lot along the way, building up the army, painting it, playing with it. You will figure out so much by just getting started. When you buy an army from the start, you can either sort of buy everything in one big go, and I like doing that. You could also just buy a start collecting box and see where it goes from there. Don't drag it out too long. You've seen a long video about it. You have gone through the process, 11 steps, and now you are ready to make a decision, man. Please like and subscribe. See you in the flips. Flipside! Go buy that bloody army, motherfucker.